This Final Fantasy VII Remake theory is going to blow your minds, guys. Tinfoil hat time, strap on in. Let's get loosey-goosey juicy. I have, for 4 or 5 years, been on the breadcrumb trail of what Square Enix are putting down, picking up what they're putting down. And I feel like I've come pretty close, pretty accurate in all of my theories. You know, there was the biggest one being I knew that there would be 5 worlds. Back when we barely even knew the nature of the 2, you know, coming out of the first game, Remake. And people are like, oh no, it's 2, but no, now they're going to die on one side and it'll collapse back down to 1. And so while people are compressing the expansion, I'm going the other one. I'm like, no, there's going to be 5. And Square Enix stood on stage and confirmed, when asked directly, how many snap timelines are there? They said there's 5. But even substantiating the 5, it always felt like it was snippets, little breadcrumb trails, me trying to pick up what Square Enix were putting down, and it felt very disparate. And something that I just needed to cohesively bring it all together. Well, I found the link, guys. This is so freaking cool and juicy. And I'm so excited for it because before we dive into it, I just think this really puts to shame a lot of people's narrow-mindedness. I understand why there's like a cynicism around Square Enix or their writing. Are they as good as they were in 1997? Because Final Fantasy VII is such a beloved, legendary title. To some people, just any changes were a sin, a betrayal. And I feel like that attitude, that temperament, led people to dismiss any of the new concepts that they were bringing. You know, the whole thing about whispers, stamp timelines, oh, this is just multiverse timeline bullshit and logic that's thrust in there lazily, just so that Square Enix can have freedom to creatively bring in characters, kill them off, resurrect them. You know, it's just a sloppy mechanism to have free reign to do whatever the fuck they want. I think that's been most people's perceptions. I'm excited because it is anything but that. This is fundamentally one of the most deep, insightful, juicy, multifaceted, layered cake of tasty scrumminess that really dives fundamentally deep into spirituality, time, the universe, all phenomena, all states of the human condition, which fundamentally, you know, is what 557 has always been about. Been about panpsychism. It's been about the collective consciousness. It's been about our characters navigating through their own desires, angers, hatreds, wants, insecurities. And as they traverse through it, the world, a world built on soul, refracts in parallels of what they're going through. You know, Wutai is a refracted parallel of Yuthi, you know, a nation under subjugation, Barrett and the crew under the plate, you know, a town of people being stomped and crushed down by corporatism and tyranny, dictatorships. Aerith, the literal sacrifice because of humanity's disregard for the planet, environmentalism, and Cloud, then really the trippy nature of who we are, the shadow, the ego, our identity. Our characters have always reflected individually larger, broader themes. And I feel like Japan and just Eastern philosophy as a whole has always been so much more deep, nuanced, layered in how it interprets, discusses, portrays, brings lessons about all of those different elements of the human condition, so much better than the West. And I'm specifically talking about like Buddhism and Taoism, also Hinduism. And so it is a perfect fit. It's not something that is a jar to the world of FF7. It is one of the most like succinct tie-ins possible. And as we go through this theory, let's just dive straight into it. You're going to see why. So Sephiroth clones. Let's talk about some superhero fake clones. Because the numerology of them, of course, makes no sense. Back in OG, it only went up to 13, so clones 1 to 13. But now we get to Remake, and suddenly we're immediately thrust with Marco, right? Clone 49. He's in place of where Cloud should have been. Cloud was nursed to health by Tifa, who found him at the train station for quite a long period of time, multiple weeks. This doesn't happen. Cloud shows up on the scene, and he's not got the same kind of Mako sickness he did in OG. And where he was in OG, Clone 49 has been under Tifa's care. And of course, I dove into that, what the meaning of 49 was. Two interpretations. One was Kabbalistic, the other one was Buddhist. And I think looking back now, the Buddhist one seems like it was absolutely the most obvious hint and foreshadowing. Because in Buddhism, 49 days, specifically Bardo and some forms of Yogacara, that's the number of days that you spend, 7 times 7, in purgatory after you die, reflecting on your life, your mistakes, your regrets. 49 days you spend before your rebirth, before you're reborn again into the world. And then the next game came along, literally titled Rebirth. So 49 was an obvious hint in hindsight of what was to come. That's not just them hopping into a new timeline, it's them moving to a different gradient of not just spiritual world, an actual different dimensionality of spirit world, but even a different level of dimensionality with them. Their clarity, their self-awareness, is beginning to bloom and blossom. I would argue that the characters are much more rapidly accelerating towards what is destined to be their more enlightened state. We see Barrett passing up on violence more often than he did before. We're seeing Cloud being more open with his feelings than he was in OG. Sid Highwind extremely transformed versus who he was in OG. Tifa literally upgrading to a next level. I mean, she went into the live stream and she was inside one of the freaking baby weapons and has gained cognizance of the live stream of the world on a far more intimate level. Yuffie's playing a role that's far more integral in like an actual capacity of representing Wutai. And I keep leaving off Nanaki. I think Nanaki literally having the bestial connection and sensory primitiveness that is unique to him, being something where he can literally wake up in his body or semi-wake up. You know when he animated on Zack's line, attacked the guys in the chopper, downed it so that Zack could get Aerith. While he's over in Rebirth, his body, his physical, acted on primal instinct in a whole different spiritual dimension. So all the characters have these extra levels, and these levels really go so deep in terms of not just their consciousness and their self-growth and evolution, we're even seeing it in sensory elements. A big part of Buddhism, Yogacara, Theravada, which we're going to be covering, is also about the aggregates, which are the senses of eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose, speech, different formations, both sensory, physical, metaphysical. Just taking the hearing aggregate, there's a reason why Barrett, he heard the voice of Wedge when no one else heard him. There's a reason why Sephiroth asked Cloud, do you hear that? Do you hear the rapture of the screaming voice? And Cloud's like, nah, they're screaming, they're in pain. Hinting towards the hearing aggregate again and again. And then it was no clearer than when Bugenhagen, the last thing he said in Rebirth before sending the crew off, was that he's old now, but that he hopes that they have the eyes to see, the ears to hear. Literally, the camera shooting Bugenhagen's eyes, his ears, his mouth, explicitly pointing to the consciousness or the senses that give rise to the totality of our consciousness. So 49, really begun that journey. But when we got to Rebirth, we had 2 more numbers that were just wildly numbered out of nowhere. We had 36 and 82. And I don't think it's reaching or looking into it too much to want to know what these numbers mean. In fact, there was that proto-relic quest where Yuffie and Red specifically point to us at the tattoos. There's some clones who just have their arms covered, some of them don't have tattoos, and then some of them that do. And I think it's Yuffie to Red or Red to Yuffie say, why do some of them have tattoos and other ones don't? And then they say, it could be a clue. They get us in our face to tell us, yeah, you know what, the numbers, they're a clue to something. Strap on your tinfoil hats. That's what I feel Square Enix are inviting us to do over these numerologies. I'm going to start with 82. Such a high numerology, right? Well, 82, I searched everything. I searched Psalms in Christianity. I searched Hinduism. I searched the Kabbalah. 82 didn't really show up really anywhere. but it did show up in one place. Theravada. Now, Theravada just happens to be the oldest school in all of Buddhism, the Abhidharma doctrine. And as I go through this, I want you to bear in mind that Nojima himself said to us, if you want to understand the story of the Remake trilogy, look into Yogacara. It is so rare for a dev to give us that kind of a lead on what their thought process is into the story. It's like they want us to explore it. You know, there's Norse mythology going on in FF7. There's numerous other mythologies used in FF. But how often have the story writers said, go explore into this, and that will give you the clues you're looking for? So Nojima said Yogacara. Well, Theravada is an off-branch of Yogacara, and you'll find out why it's an off-branch, because they share the same theme, because 82 in the Theravada Abhidharma represents the entire constitution of the physical and the spiritual world, with a complexity and layering that kind of blows my mind. So there are 82 dharmas, according to Theravada. And dharmas essentially means phenomenal reality, or the phenomena of reality, ultimate reality. It says here the basic constituents or factors of experience, whether they be mental or physical. And out of the 82 dharmas, 81 of them are conditioned, and only one is unconditioned. I probably don't need to explain conditioning, but the one that is unconditioned is Nibbana, which is Nirvana. So you could say that's the source of everything. The Kabbalists would call this Ein Sof. Religions would call this God. String theory would point this to being the Big Bang, the infinity that came from, you know, a space smaller than an atom. The epicenter of everything before it took any kind of shape or form in the universe. And the 81 dharmas that are conditioned, they arise dependent on causes subject to change. The 81 conditioned dharmas can essentially be broken down into three broad categories. Now, for anyone who's seen my previous theories, you'll know that I've been saying that 3, 5, and 8 are not only in string theory. 3, 5, and 8 is what constitutes the entire building blocks of the universe. I'm not going to go all into it, but one of the really cool ones was in string theory, there's the 5 superstrings that have 8 different theories under them. The 5 superstrings are basically an explanation of everything. Everything almost explains everything, but not quite everything. And so the 5 superstrings are essentially 5 alternate explanations of the universe. All of them are both accurate but incomplete, and it's only all 5 of them that actually explain one another. Then you've got the 5 worlds of the Kabbalah, and you've also got the 5 aggregates, which all of these exist within the construct of 3. I know this is really fucking convoluted shit, but follow me. In Theravada, those 82 fall into 3 major groups. Sita, which is consciousness and awareness. So this is mind, this is knowing. The second is Cetasika. This is mental factors. These are all the mental events that accompany consciousness, feeling, perception, volitions. And then 28 of the third one, Rupa, which is material phenomena and physical phenomena. And these 3, of which, you know, just bringing it back to Remake, or specifically Rebirth, I find a strong parallel to it being even the cover of the game. The cover of the game was separated into 3 distinct color sections. You had Zack on one side with the blue color scheme, the great blue sky. You had, I think it was Cloud in the middle. Cloud in the middle? I think, and he had the green color scheme, and then you had Sephiroth, I think, on the right with the red color scheme, the world of chaos, the world of destruction. And then I suppose you could say the world of dreams or desire being Zack, because that's what he was. He was a dreamer. Follow your dreams. To be a soldier, you have to have dreams. So we have desire worlds, chaos worlds, and then the actual world. And that really beautifully, succinctly ties in with the description of Sita, Cetasika, and Rupa, the cosmology of both Theravada and Yogacara, which I just got to caveat. Philosophers often say that Yogacara and Theravada are direct parallels. They are overlaps. They speak about them while there are variations and differences. They are strains of Buddhism that think about time and reality and phenomena, the universe and cosmology. And because they go so deep, Philosophers often tie them and they share a lot of the same ideas. Within the three are the 5 simplified schemes. And these 5 worlds, it says here, are not separate planets, but modes of consciousness or states of rebirth, conditioned by karma. They explain the spectrum of suffering and joy all beings experience, and they frame the urgency of practice and action. Now, those 5 worlds, again, 5 stamped timelines, fall into hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and devas. Now, because I want to try to keep this short, I'm not going to go into all of those, but if you just take it on principle, the fallen angel of Sephiroth being hell, that's a world that he's trying to create, the world of chaos. Hungry ghosts, when we've literally got whispers, we've actually got baggy ghost people floating around. Devas would be a more transcendent metaphysical realm, which I would absolutely say is, we went to one. When you remember that Aerith is essentially a goddess, and the dream date, we call it a dream date that she went to, that world is a world that Aerith has created. It's a desire realm, because again, not only were all the souls in there living out their desires and thanking Aerith for it, so you had the lady with the sweet shop trying to create her ultimate sweet. You also had all those couples living out their romantic fantasies, everything that they desired in life. And not just the NPCs living out their desires. Aerith was also living out her desire in this desire realm. Again, Nojima's done a lot of the writing on this, and one of the last things he left in Maiden Who Travels the Planet is her urge to come back and re-experience a date with Cloud. And while she's talking about a date with Cloud, she's also conflicted with her feelings about Zack and Cloud. This is all the desire of Aerith, the romantic, who wants to be vulnerable, who wants to be loved. The girl within the Cetra, the human within the Cetra with a high duty. She just wants to have these simple, romantic, life-lived experiences with the men that she cares about. And I would say that desire, from that desire realm, is what pulled Cloud when he's floating off with Sephiroth in the fucking world between. The world between where we heard the black material really was, and then it shows up in fucking Cloud's pocket. What pulled him out of that was the dream date scenario. So the resonance of Aerith creating a desire realm and then pulling Cloud into her desire realm, and then what was she doing? She was acting all giddy, like a giddy romantic schoolgirl, and Cloud was like, what are you doing? This isn't you. And she's trying to brush over it. And then Cloud repeats it again. He says it twice, the emphasis. He's like, you're not behaving like your normal self. And then this is where we get into the remnants idea. Not remnants like Lozkart, Kadaj, and Yazoo, which are fragmented elements of Sephiroth's darkness, his narcissism, his god complex, his mummy issues. We could see the remnants of Aerith being broken, separate manifestations of her beautiful sides. The one that wants to be loved. The one that wants to be a high fantasy shaman and save the world and protect the planet. I do think one of those manifestations of her kind of remnant, not Omni Aerith, remnant Aerith, did also have the lost girl who is full of grief, because she was very angry in Rebirth. Multiple times, her anger, her resentment, her bitterness got way too much for her. Aerith in Rebirth was really angsty, a very different personality to the one in the remake. And it's because all of these different, depending on the realm that you're in, whether it's hell, hungry, ghost, animal, human, or deva, being that they are all different manifestations of the storehouse of consciousness, I think it then affects the, what's the best word? I was going to say the vibration or the density at what the person's consciousness is operating within. And being that Aerith is, of course, the most spiritually intuitively attuned to densities, to vibrating forces, to changes within the life stream, I think we see it clearer than her, but I think clearest through her. But if we observe the other characters as well, we also see them experience these kind of different layers of heaviness or densities. Now, taking a deep breath, because this is a lot to take in. I know you're doing a fantastic job, mate. Let me pickle your brain further. Of those 82 in Buddhism that constitute everything, Yogacara breaks down out of those 82. Yogacara actually takes up to 100. Yogacara takes to 100 because while Theravada just has one unconditioned, dharma, the center of everything, Nirvana. Yogacara actually breaks that into multiple. So that's why there's the number different, but fundamentally how they work doesn't really change. Because one of the other Sephiroth numbers, what did I say? I said 36. Well, would you believe it that in Theravada, there are 36 kinds of feelings. And those are broken up into 3 modes, pleasant, painful, and neutral. And each experience within the 5 senses, multiplied further by worldly and unworldly states of existence. The total being 36. But here's where it gets even cooler. So that's Theravada's take on 36. Just broadly general, all 36 feelings. And that can include, like I said, pleasant and neutral. Yogacara actually says that those 36 feelings are all painful. Defilements, 36 poisons, 36 mental disturbances. There are 36 modalities of mental and physical and emotional sickness. Now, where did we see Clone 36 in the game? It was the one that was in Sharon's office. You know, Dr. Sheeran, Ed Sheeran, fucking the doctor that helped Tifa recover from her scar. We see him in Mount Coral. Mount Coral, which is a very, very sick place. But Dr. Sheeran has the clones and he's trying to help them. He's trying to heal them. In that moment, the story is focusing on the sickness of the clones. So it's thematically tied in at the point of the story. And this also is for 82, because what did I say 82 was? It's about cosmological phenomena as well as the internal and the human condition phenomena. So it's including things like time and space and the past and the present and the future. And where did we see 82? On a proto-relic quest. Proto-relic quest. The little fucking proto things that Gilgamesh was chasing. Gilgamesh who came and hopped from another universe. There's something obviously with the proto-relics that is infused with some sort of cosmological dimension traveling power. The very thing that we go hunting on all these side quests and have all these strange, bizarre phenomena experiences, which culminates in Sephiroth and Gilgamesh, something I thought I would never see. Like having a little face down. Going back to those 36 afflictions, would you not say this is also what constitutes part of a Sephiroth clone, or just the ideology of Sephiroth and how he gains his power? He gains his power through what? Suffering. And also playing on people's desires, their hatred, their anger, their loss. Well, the 36 afflictions are broken down into dark desire, hatred, and ignorance. Another part of Sephiroth's power, and we see it through Cloud, is mental distortions. Well, it says here, Theravada's 36 pay attention to the basic tone of every experience across the 5 realms of the senses. The Yogacara tracks the various subtle forms of mental distortion to see how samsara is maintained, compounded. Samsara, the wheel of samsara, basically staying in a world of illusion, distortion, untruths. And because there's 36 of them, that's why the Buddhists recommend 36 different practical training numbers, which are ways to systemize meditation on the mind. So it's actually 36 different training tools enabled to overcome and essentially exit stage left out of the various worlds of illusions. Now, what does this essentially mean for the story? Peasant. This all sounds great, but what does it mean for the story? Well, I had to go and explore Theravada and Yogacara stories, very specifically. And if you go on my channel, you'll see that I did a Yogacara one, which was on Maitreya, the future Buddha. That I believe that this is essentially Aerith's thematic secret identity. Go check that video out. It's really freaking juicy. Because, yeah, Maitreya is essentially the Buddha of the future. A Buddha that maintains some semblance of awareness of their past incarnations, which Aerith definitely does, but it's only just partial, just like it is for Maitreya. And Maitreya essentially comes back when the world is hitting its peak state of decadence. The world is starting to fall into ruin. People have become lost in the illusion. It even goes into details of how they start poisoning the planet. disconnecting from nature, everything that Final Fantasy VII is. And at that moment of humanity about to fall into darkness and ruin, Maitreya comes back and with his gifts essentially assembles a soul squad to do a spiritual revolution on the world. And Maitreya, the future Buddha, happens to have an opponent called Shakyamuni, and Shakyamuni is trying to undermine Maitreya's attempts to redeem and save the world, and they settle their dispute by having a flower growing competition. Yellow flowers for Aerith, but we also have the purple ones for Sephiroth. It's so juicy. That whole little section about Maitreya assembling a soul squad, I didn't really look deeper into that because I was just looking at Yogacara. But again, Yogacara shares so much with Theravada. Well, in Theravada, there is a story called the Apidanas. Now, the Apidanas is a fascinating and often overlooked layer of the Theravadic canon, elements of which show up in Yogacara stories. And it reads almost like Buddha's past life legends. The word Abhidharma literally meaning that, life story or legend. And they usually begin with a monk or nun in the present who recalls a great deed done in their previous life. That act from their previous life, often a simple but heartfelt offering to the world, becomes the karmic causality for them to attain awakening in the present. To be clear, OG has happened for our characters and has always happened. Though they don't have cognitive memory of it, they're not aware of Advent Children, not aware of the events of OG, they exist. And what we're seeing very clearly in the Remake trilogy is everything that they did, which you could describe as heartfelt offering to the world, is what's spurring them to awakening now here in the present, to a greater degree, to a greater emphasis. Actually, I'll read it in more detail. So this is Samana, the flower offerer. Long ago, countless eons in the past, in the time of Buddha Padamutara, which was a Buddha before Gautama, which is like the main Buddha that we all kind of know the story of, there was a simple man named Sumana. He was not wealthy, not a great scholar, nor a king. He was just an ordinary person with a deep sense of reverence. One day he saw the other Buddhas approaching with a retinue of monks, and the Buddha's radiance shone brighter than the sun. Samana, overwhelmed with devotion, rushed forward with nothing in his hands but a flower. I want to take you guys back to Aerith coming forward to Cloud with the flower. Symbolizes reunion. The yellow flower in the freaking cosmos at the edge of creation. Follow them, follow the yellow flowers. Samana rushes forward with a flower he had picked that morning and he places it reverently at the Buddha's feet. The flower seems small compared to the grandeur of the Buddha, but in that moment, Samana's heart was filled with pure joy, free from selfishness. And the Buddha, noticing this, smiled and declared, "In the distant future, after many eons, this man shall become a disciple of another Buddha, Gautama. He will attain Arantship, I think enlightenment, freed from the cycle of rebirth." The assembly rejoiced and Samana's heart leapt with faith. Countless lifetimes passed. Samana wandered through the births as a Deva, so in the Deva world, the spirit world, the life stream in this scenario, where Aerith's been, where Zack's been. I mean, we really have to question, have Cloud and the gang been that? I mean, we know Cloud's been in the live stream. We now know Tifa's been in the live stream. But do we really know how the events of OG have actually flowed into Rebirth? When did Sephiroth, this is what I always theorize and assume, use the power of Terror Corrupt? The bulk of the live stream that they had corrupted to their sides, the live stream, the building blocks of reality, they used that to reopen the timeline. But when did this happen in juxtaposition to OG? Was this after Advent Children? Was this after the canon as it was left off, where Cloud and Tifa essentially raised Marlene and Denzel as a traditional family unit? Did they live their whole lives and eventually die and went into the live stream and now they're back? We really don't know. That could be a possibility. My point being, he wandered through the Deva realm, and even in difficult realms, even in some of the hell realms that animal realms. But the seed of that single flower offering remained. The flower shined like a jewel within him. At last, in the time of Gautama, Sumana was reborn as an ordinary man again, drawn to the Dharma. He ordained practically, diligently, and one day with mindfulness steady and insight clear, he broke through all his fetters. He realized enlightenment. Then, as he hit enlightenment, he recalled the distant past and exclaimed in a verse, "Because of that flower I offered long ago, I have wandered in their heavens, I have wandered lower still. I have known happiness for eons and suffering as well, but now I have reached the end of rebirth. Blessed was that single act of devotion." Follow them. Follow the yellow flowers. Aerith is leaving that flower in this story as essentially a tethering to not just the characters, the characters and their soul, and telling them to follow it. The flower itself represents essentially all the qualities within the 82 different dharmas, the very core fundamentals of navigating through the world of suffering and illusion and darkness and manipulation, and to stay on the side of, well, I mean, it says it here, faith, devotion, sincerity, love, clarity, that small deeds can have fast results. Even a simple flower offered can be done with such sincerity that it echoes across lifetimes. Wisdom and karmic vastness, they remind us that actions are never lost. Their results may just blossom and bloom like a flower later on. And it's hope for ordinary people. You don't need wealth or power to plant seeds of liberation, just sincerity of heart. Anyone who is a massive FF7 fan, you can feel at the core how many of those themes are so prevalent, so central to FF7. Yeah, especially hope for ordinary people. Massive in FF7. So I went through the Theravada and Yogacara with the fine-tooth comb. Theravada was the Samana, the flower offerer. A very cool, similar parallel story in Yogacara with the flower is that the flower is the ultimate symbol of universal Buddhahood. All beings can bloom like a lotus from the mud. The sutra explicitly describes the Buddha's teachings as a way to save the world by revealing universal liberation. The story goes deeper into the Flower Ornament Sutra, and this says that the entire cosmos is depicted as a net of jewels and flowers. The edge of creation, giant yellow flower behind cloud. Holy shit. And that it also is an interpretation of infinity in the cosmos, its endless expanse. Saving the world here means realizing that all beings are connected like blossoms in a cosmic garden. Another really cool one, because those other ones are kind of like enlightenment and compassion. Another one is like for perseverance and never giving up. Sanga's vision of Maitreya. So Maitreya, the future Buddha, Aerith, or at least who I've drawn a parallel to. Asanga, after years of meditation, he became discouraged. One day he saw a man trying to wear down an enormous rock by brushing it with a flower. At first, he thought it was foolish, like he'll never be able to do that. But the persistence of him inspired Asanga to continue meditating. Eventually, in this persistence, he had his famous vision of Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, who then taught him the Yogacara treatises. Flowers symbolize perseverance in the Bodhisattva vow to save the world, no matter how impossible it seems. Now, where do we leave off in Rebirth? We obviously had the flip up on Aerith's death. That only Cloud can see her alive. Is she dead? Is she not? Cloud, who's undergone deep psychic, spiritual, emotional. I mean, he's literally floated between fucking worlds. Cloud, who, even in the OG story, was the first one to be pushed. Like he said on the airship before the final fight. He's been thinking about the world, about clouds, about trees, about mountains. He's thinking about the universe at large. Cloud, who has a fucking beam of light from the live stream, and Aerith's hands come through. That's why I've always said, as well as there being some sort of romantic element between Cloud and Aerith, which I do think there is, that it's more a pupil guru story. Well, in this tale, Asanga would be Cloud, Aerith would be Maitreya, And that Asanga, by undergoing basically deep revolutions, a deep revolution? Yeah, revolution of his thinking, of his spirituality, through perseverance and through a tether to this idea of the flower, that's what allows him to see Maitreya. Is that what is allowing Cloud to see Aerith? Possible. But, I did just also miss off, because I thought about this earlier. While I was thinking about Aerith's dream date as a desire realm, one of the 5, not only does she have a desire realm that attracted Cloud into it, one that Sephiroth was hunting, because when he came into the church, what did he say? He said, you've been hiding here. Implying, like we've heard in Maiden Who Travels Through the Planet, there's a real cat and mouse in the live stream between Aerith and Sephiroth. Him constantly trying to hunt her, and her evading him. And trying to hide the white materia, puts it in Cloud's hands and pushes him out of the desire realm. And then Cloud is then in a forest, and then Aerith pops out and is like, oh, good to see you again. Good to see you. You just pushed Cloud through a portal like literally 20 seconds ago. But because they're different eras and time and space and dimensionality, it all fucking operates on different wavelengths, and we're getting all of these hints given to us. But point being, who also showed up in the Desire Realm? Zack did. You know when Zack tries to go into the church and Sephiroth says, no, not you. And he swipes at Zack, and then Zack gets thrown out of the world. So Aerith's Desire Realm also attracted Zack into it, because he also has that romantic desire for Zack as well. Crazy. But anyway, flowers, devotion can transform into cosmic liberation, which I think is ultimately the story of FF7, is cosmic liberation. And I mean, let's just really focus on that for a second. Cosmic liberation. That's a really strong word, and I think works on so many layers, because where we can easily point to, Barrett and the gang wanting to liberate the world from the suffering of Shinra, but then it goes deeper than that when suddenly they have to try to liberate it from the grasp of Geova and the souls, the Black Whispers that have been corrupted, so like worldly liberation. But on a much more macro picture, Sephiroth has directly told us, looked up into the heavens and said, one day all of this will be sucked into black holes. We've heard references of Sephiroth now, and through the compilation becoming aware that there's not just a life stream on the world of FF7, there's a cosmic one. It links the A worlds and the B worlds, and the C and the D and the fucking Kingdom Hearts. There's a much bigger cosmic one. And there's everything to say that Sephiroth also wants liberation. What is his ultimate goal? It's not for, and this is why I say, like, could he end up fighting Geova or really parting ways in part 3? I'd like to see that, because Geova just wants to absorb all life. She is like necrotic in all of its theology. It's just to move a state of life into a state of death, where it is the only thing. Sephiroth doesn't want that. He's never wanted that. All he wants is to essentially purify, in his own fucked up, crazy way, purify humanity. The evil of Shinra, the corruptness of the human condition. I mean, that's why he looked at the Cetra, which, the Cetra are, for all thematic reasons, just a representation of humanity. I mean, they literally are humans. Cetras are just basically woke human beings. And Sephiroth wanted to not only identify as one, but after finding out that was a bullshit lie and he isn't actually a Cetra, he's still on that essential goal to basically enlighten humanity, liberate it from its corruption, with him at the center as a god deity figure, an arbiter of this, what this purifying looks like. So although it's fucked up, it is fundamentally the same. And that's why I do want the resolution with Sephiroth to be that, yeah, he has to in some way circumvent Geova, because their goals really do diverge. And I just want to see that, however that shows up. It doesn't need to be Sephiroth's a good guy, Sephiroth gets redeemed and whatnot. I just want the story to clearly show us how they're not fundamentally the same. And I floated it before that it would be cool if the ending was to put Sephiroth into some kind of Luciferic Satan role, where essentially, like what Caius Ballard in 13.2 had to be. He had to be the one who ran the realm of chaos, we have the world of life stream, we have the world of chaos. And it's like, well, for all intents and purposes, and the Ultimania made this clear to us, not all the souls that are under Sephiroth's control are under it from pure coercion. No, the Ultimania makes it quite clear that there are just souls that are full of spite and anger and vengeance, and they have that will to stay individualized for the sake of dominance and playing out their suffering and their torture. Like, there is actually implied a semblance of free will even in those souls, and to have them as a place in the world. This is like real world law of one, which is a spiritual theory, I guess, that I really like the idea of, that all souls can with free will choose either a path of service to others or service to self. One that would essentially be the white whispers, or one that would be the black whispers, and that it will be paved with suffering and torment and difficulty. And there will be according to the law of one, a cap on how far you can ascend before essentially the gravity of the darkness, or the gravity of love being in counter polarity to the gravity of darkness. Gravity on love and darkness becomes too much to bear, that it essentially then implodes on itself. And just like the yin and yang, again, another core central theme of Buddhism, polarity, contrast, because light doesn't exist without darkness, order without chaos, love without hate. Contrast is essential for all things to exist. This is also what the Yogacarix and the Theravadas point out. All of these emotions, all of these modalities, they all have a role. And I just think it would be cool if in some way Sephiroth plays into that. I mean, that's where we have Genesis Rhapsodos essentially placed, because we see that contrast within the live stream. Minerva was very much retribution and vengeance. I mean, Zack Fair had to fight her ass. She cast Genesis down, and now we see Genesis picking up Weiss's body. There's so much more to do. Like, these themes of dark and light and grey are all present in the FF7 universe and compilation. And I think that while that's all happening on, say, Sephiroth's end, the counter to that has always been Aerith. But of course, Aerith now, being as she is dead, might be relegated to just live stream mode from here on out. But even in OG, I always think it then became Cloud having to then enact on the teachings of Aerith. And that's what happens in this story, in the Theravada. He gets a vision of Maitreya, learns Maitreya's lessons, Maitreya teaches them to him, and then he carries that into his next incarnation. And the Theravada, the 5 realms, set the stage of the Bodhisattva's repeated rebirths, where offerings like flowers plant karmic seeds that culminate into the lessons of Buddhahood that can bring about a universal saving of all 5 worlds. 5 stamp timelines. But what I always think is cool there is I don't think that Cloud is just going to then be capable of acting purely on, as like an agent of Aerith, because that's the beauty of Aerith. She's never wanted to make Cloud a puppet. Sephiroth wants Cloud to be his puppet. Aerith has never forced her will upon him. Written about very explicitly in Najima's writings that Aerith could do a lot more to save the world a lot quicker, but oftentimes that would come at the expense of either toying with Cloud's emotions, affecting him and his free will, and she refuses to do it time and time again. And I think because of that choice of free will, just like I was saying, how you can choose one path or the other, Cloud, I think, is going to be the beautiful in-between. Whatever the world resolution, transformation is, of which I think we're going to see a really, really big one in this third part, I think it would be so much thematically cooler if it's shades of Aerith and Sephiroth. Both. Because I think that Cloud is deeply, intrinsically tethered to both of them. Aerith through his love and that admiration and even idealistic wants for the world, but also through Sephiroth, through his hatred and anger and resentment and his fear of letting go, his fear of accepting death. And I think that could become a really cool choice that Cloud then has to make. And this is why I get into like God mode Cloud theory. He's going to make some God level decision on what the world looks like. And that's going to dictate what the awakening of the world is. I think that's fundamentally where this is all leading to when you read that. This is all going to be a story of awakening on a mass collective conscious level, but it won't just all look airy-fairy and now we're all just like woke hippies, like the Cetra VR, all in their fucking robes, huffing pot and downing magic mushrooms. It's going to have diversity within it. I think one of those diversities of liberation could also come in the form of the G tribe. What's their liberation going to look like? This race that are trapped in perpetual suffering on the planet. What is it going to look like for our Jesse Biggs and Dean in the live stream versus our fucking Hojos and President Shinras? And I've made this video way long enough, but I'll just finish off with why Fire Stamp Timelines is beautiful and why the theme of flowers is really cool. Because here's a really flamboyant story of the Bodhisattva that I read. Is that each of these 5 worlds were each represented by a flower. The Black Lotus was a hell being. In one corner of this lake, a blackened lotus struggles, petals scorched by fires, stem trapped in mud. The flower never opened, crushed under the weight of its own heat and pain. This was the world of hell beings, born from hatred and cruelty. Its message: when anger burns, the mind creates its own furnace. Yet even here, in this darkest of realms, the seed of awakening slept within, waiting for cooling waters of compassion. The second flower is the withered flower, represents hungry ghosts. It grew close to the hell realm, thin and shriveled. Roots drank from dry mud and its petals always thirsted, never satisfied. The flower reached toward the sun but never felt its warmth. This was the world of hungry ghosts, born from insatiable cravings. Its message: desire never ends, even when we grasp outside of ourselves. But one drop of Dharma rain could swell its stems, showing that endless hunger may one day bloom into generosity. Oh, I would go as far as to say that one drop of Dharma, Aerith gave that drop, because FF7 has for the longest of times played it where Aerith's memories, when given to hungry ghosts, aka souls that are trapped in purgatory, when she's going through the live stream, they're just like these amorphous, they don't have any identities. Everything gives them some of her memory, a part of her Dharma, a part of the fabric of her cognitive makeup, her phenomena, if you will, encompassing mind and dreams, the transcendent and like soul qualities of her. She gives them a bit and then it helps them form themselves. And that's why ghosts are swarming her. They're doing it in Remake, they do it in Rebirth, they do it in the novella chapters, because she's such a conduit, she's such a source for Dharma Rain, how it's being described here, that it can bring them back to their identities. And Aerith does it for Jesse Biggs, Dean and Wedge in the novella stories, lends them a piece of her memory to help them form themselves and then tell their stories and then move past their grief so they can get out of the withered world, purgatory. But then we saw it literally in Remake. The Ghosts in the Train Graveyard. They're floating amorphous bags with tears on them. And then as they're swarming her, we suddenly see Aerith, a memory of her as a child playing hide and seek with other children. And Aerith stands up and she's like, come and find me. Come and find me. And Aerith cries, a tear, drop of Dharma rain, Dharma water. The themes of the water in the live stream. A tear comes down her eye and suddenly we see the bags transform into the forms of the ghost children. And then later we see them then dissolve in what looks like almost faith-like sprinkles, sparklies, almost identical to Yuna when she does her dancing. So it's there, it's present. The Dharma rain could swell its stem and basically move them out of the state of endless hunger as a ghost. The third, the wildflower, so the animal realm. In another patch, thick stems tangled and a sturdy lotus bloomed low to the water, instinctively seeking light but without directions. Its beauty was simple, but it knew nothing of its own nature. This was the world of animals, born from ignorance and fear. Its message: life bound to survival alone cannot yet see liberation. Still, with guidance, even the simplest lotus could grow tall above the mud. This is very Remake, because in Remake, they are most ignorant to their true nature. Cloud is his most selfish douchebaggy at the start of Remake. Tifa and Barrett and the gang, they are in a mode of survival, just trying to survive, going on bombing runs with little to no clue of the broader nature of things. So that entire stamp timeline, you could say, is that. The fourth, the human flower. Then came a lotus halfway open, not black, not withered, not tangled. Its petals spread wide enough to taste the sun and feel the mud beneath. This was the rarest of flowers. This was the world of humans, where wisdom and delusion balance. Its message, here lies the chance to choose. This is rebirth, boundless, terrifying freedom. At this point, fate is broken. Fate is fucking broken, and they can rechange their destinies. Like it says here lies the chance to choose, to either fall back into the mud or rise above it. The Buddha said, hard is it to gain human rebirth, harder still to use it well. The human flower is the gateway. And then finally, the fifth, and maybe this is in some way going to tie to the third game. Finally, high above the water, a lotus shimmered with many colours. Its fragrance filled the air, and all who saw it rejoiced. Yet its roots still touched the mud, and in time, even this flower would fade. This was the world of devas, filled with bliss, but bound to impermanence. The very thing, the very theme of this entire story, the very essence of what makes Sephiroth a villain is that he's trying to run away from, escape the reality of impermanence. That he will die, that the world will die, that the cosmos will die. And he's trying to weaponize impermanence against Cloud. Cloud, who has lost loved ones, his village, his mother, Aerith, kind of now. Well, that's the thing. Like, he had an OG, but now with this, whatever Aerith's state is, his concept of impermanence is fucked. Sephiroth is, I feel, some way creating this scenario where Cloud can be teased and taunted with the idea that he can save everyone, that Aerith is still alive. When Cloud, unlike Tifa, crying her fucking eyes out, and Cloud sat away from the rest of them, staring at the black materia, slotting it into his Buster Sword, having no fucking human connection and compassion with the rest of the gang, who are grieving Aerith's loss, and Cloud's in this like fucked up kind of weird state, because Sephiroth has long, and he's been messaging it throughout the game, the world's going to die, Cloud. Everything's going to die. Help me save the world. Don't you want to save the world? What, you want everyone to die? He's flirting and fucking with this element of trying to move away from the impermanent nature of things. This is where I think the third theme of the game is really going to knuckle into. Oh, my laptop's going to die. No, the opportunity for bliss and redemption, but having to accept it will still be bound to impermanence. Its message, the light is not freedom. Even here, beauty fades. When its petals fall, the devas too would return to the cycle. Thus, the five worlds are not prisons, but petals, and every flower, even the darkest of these realms, of these five realms, carries the possibility of blooming into the light that saves the world. And that's what I think encompasses the entire theme and direction of the episode Remake trilogy. And it's good. It's good shit. like all of that is just on point. Obviously, it's all going to come down to execution. Now, we can all argue back and forth, left and right. I mean, there's certain YouTubers, I'm not going to name them, who seem to be making an entire career out of taking big fat shits on the Remake trilogy. And I get it. How a game is executed from what it's ideologically setting out to do is still up in the air. An idea is all well and good, but the execution of the idea is obviously critical. And for some of you, too many mini games or a combat system you don't like, or some of the scenes being too wacky and ridiculous, whether that's red moonwalking or what one person really takes issue with the cat lady who was singing. Other really derpy moments that they think just makes the whole thing an abomination. I love those moments. I think FF7 has always been quirky and quacked out and ridiculous. I do, however, saying that, have absolute gripes with moments where it tone shifts too quickly. Dean's death was a perfect one. Barely got to feel into it. They avoided the suicide route because, I guess, sensitivity of a subject, and instead had Dean in a really lame way, sort of gunned down instead of taking his own life, which I think was significantly less powerful. But then they had old Speedo-chan showing up with his fucking bulge, and then we're fighting Palmer in a fog machine. I was like, come on, guys. Let the moment marinate a bit. But that's even not an issue exclusive to the Remake trilogy. Like, let's just remember, we went snowboarding moments after Aerith's death in OG, So we all have like different interpretations of execution and tonality and pacing. I know that's all subjective to every one of us, but what I hope this theory and this video just really emphasizes is the setup of the world and the world mechanic and what it's looking to explore and show us. The resonance of mental and emotional and spiritual even messaging that it's attempting to give us is actually very, very profound and really serves the OG mechanics of FF7 in a really beautiful way. Like, it fits quite remarkably, and that's what I think the Sephiroth clones are. That's what I think 82, 49, 36. There's more that I could go into with the clones and the numbering, but this video is long enough. That's what I'm absolutely convinced that those numerologies are hinting to us at, and that's exactly what I think Najima was looking to have us explore when he said to us, if you want to understand this story, look at Yogacara Buddhism. So there we go. Let me know what you think, guys, in the comment section below. I am so hot and sweaty. God, look at it. That fucking, I'm moist. The tinfoil temperature just went up too high. I need a fucking shower. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Until the next video.